Students, this morning I'm going to run through the processes that are involved in getting our project up to this stage. Okay, the first thing we need to do is we have 4 pieces of timber. A front and back section and 2 side sections. These will be pre-cut for you before we begin the exercise. The first thing we need to do is mark our timber as we've been working through in our practice sessions. Okay. We know the. Hang on.
It's okay.
I've got to check my train of thought. Okay, so we're down to the first piece here, and we're going to go through and mark it as we did in the practice sessions. We come down 15 mil, turn it around, 15 millimetres again. Then we use the square, the tri-square, and we square those marks all the way around. And we, of course, we do that both ends. The next thing we do is we need to mark out all our dimensions for our finger joins. See that I've marked out the finger joins. They go in 20mm increments, so it's 20, 40, 60, 80, up to 120 mil. We do that on both ends. And from here we place the timber in the vise using the tri-square. All our marks we've done for the finger joins. Making sure that we move the tri-square according to where it best fits. Just put it into the vise so that our hands are free and we can concentrate on marking across the top. At this point we turn the square around and then mark down the other side to our square line across the timber. Turn the square around again. Okay, now we have one end marked square, ready to be cut out for the finger joints. But first, we need to indicate which pieces we are going to cut out. And we do that with a nice X. We are about to use a tool that is extremely sharp, so you must exhibit due caution when using this tool and give it the respect it deserves. Okay, we have our areas marked. First we need to do is a straight cut with a tenon saw. The tenon saw is perfect for cutting a straight cut because it has a nice spine on the back, which keeps it nice and stable. When we're cutting, make sure you get down to the work, 1 foot back, 1 foot forward, which is a nice stable position. We don't want students standing too upright when they're cutting. Okay, that doesn't allow for your ability to get down to the work, and also means you're going to have a messy cut. Okay, so back into the right position, down to the work. We're going to cut inside the line. Inside the line where the X is, not on the outside of the line, on the inside. I always start with my thumb as a bit of a guide, nice and easy over the top of the timber, Get it running, okay, it's a bit. Now I can cut down. Now I'm going to do the second cut, inside the line again. Nice and easy, not down too far. Check the other side. Okay, I've just got to go down a little bit more on the other side there. Okay, and we're there. It's called a coping saw. I like to say that it's for curvy cuts, and it looks like a C, so C for curvy cuts. Alright? Okay, this one's a little bit tricky. We need to start the saw moving inside the cut. When it bites the timber, we can start turning the saw until it gets just above the line. Very important that you go just above the line, not below the line. Okay, we turn the saw over, we can cut up and take a bit off. Alright. That's one nice clean cut. We need to repeat those cuts on every single X timber that we prepared earlier. All the finger joints have been cut out using the same process that we just showed you then. And now we're going to proceed onto the side piece. Okay, we put the piece, small section, into the vise so that it frees our hands up, because we need to place the larger section on top of the smaller section. We're going to mark where those finger joins are on top of the other piece. Now you'll notice that it has a B and an arrow. That means we need to put a B and an arrow on the smaller section. Okay. That ensures that B always lines up with B, and the arrow pointing up and the arrow pointing up are always pointing the same direction. That'll ensure that this piece, the larger section, is going where it was designed to go. You can see now that not only do we have the marks on the top, but I've put the X's in and our lines down the side similar to the front and back section. I'm now going to remove all the timber with an X on it, as we did with the front pieces before, and show you the two different styles of cutting that we do on the side pieces. The first cut is very similar, or the same as the original cut in the front and back section. We cut down in between the lines. Again here. Notice my position, I'm down nice and close to the timber so I can see what I'm doing. We're going to do a different cut on this one. It's going to be inside the line again. Okay, while this piece needs to be removed with the coping saw. Same process. Remove the waste again. At this point, we need to move the timber in the vise onto its side so that we can effectively remove that little corner piece. So inside the line, right on the line, cutting nice and straight, and that last piece is removed. removed all the sections with an X on it. They're correlated with the front and back section with the B. We can now fit that section, and we can see that it fits quite nicely. You'll also notice that the B and the arrow are both on the outside and pointing in the right direction, so that means I've got this piece in the right spot. We can now move on to correspond with the other section, or the back, let's call this the back section of the work. You will see that there's an A and an arrow. You'll also notice there's an A and an arrow on that piece, always on the outside of the timber, and we'll fit that together, and we can see that A and A fit together quite nicely. So my marking and cutting have worked out quite well. I've got the right pieces in the right place, and I can continue on in this vein doing the same thing with all of my four pieces. All the timber has been marked and cut out accordingly. You can see I have CC lining up here, BB lining up there, which means D will line up with D. D will line up with D, sorry. That's all right. And A will line up with A. One thing we should check first though is that the whole project fits together quite nicely. If it doesn't fit together quite nicely, we can clean up our joins with a chisel. Sometimes things don't go perfectly well. A lot of the time your cutting may not be perfect, or your marking may not be perfect. These joins here fit together very, very nicely. If they did not fit together, and there was a situation where one of the fingers was too big, or one of the openings was too small, we can use a chisel, which may remove a small amount of timber from the side. Of course, these chisels are exceptionally sharp. They need to be sharp to be able to cut timber, so you need to be very, very careful when you're using them. You can see here that the chisel will take off a very, very small amount of timber. We always use the chisels to clean up our job. We never use a file, and we do not use sandpaper. Sandpaper is for finishing, and that will come into the project much later on. At this stage, we just use the tenon saw, the coping saw, chisels, bench vise, and of course our favourite tool that doesn't get a lot of credit, the bench hook. Alright, what you may have noticed so far is the fact that we're marking particular positions, and we're also indicating which way is up. This is exceptionally important because of the process that we went through, where we marked B on top of B. We do this because there may be subtle variations in your cutting. Those variations can be compensated for when we put it on top of the actual piece that is being removed. So this is, instead of measuring, we don't measure the small sections, we put the large section on top of the small section and we mark it accordingly. This will ensure that the project has a nice tight join. If we were to measure the small section as we measured the large section, there's a very good chance we're not going to have a very neat join. This is to ensure that we have a neat join. Also, on top of that, B will always join up with B. C will always join up with C. C cannot be swapped around and put somewhere else. They also cannot be moved upside down. They all must point in the same direction. It's very important that you follow these rules and that you do mark the work accordingly. It is very, very important that we do mark the timber. Accordingly, 4 items. So, you've done all your cutting, you've checked that all the pieces are okay, they're all clean and ready to go. We know they fit well, we've made a lot of adjustments, now it's time for gluing and assembly. What you'll need is a paintbrush, some PVA glue, also the picture framing clamp. Okay, first we need to cover all the joins quite liberally with the PVA. We don't want the PVA running everywhere, okay, so you need to be reasonably neat with the amount of PVA that you put in the joins. But we do want to coat them quite well, as the timber will soak up some of the glue. We do this on all 4 pieces. Okay, so we're nearly finished gluing all the sections, and we're going to get ready for assembly. The first thing we're going to do is just gently place them all together in the right position. So you can see we have A, arrow, C. I'm going to need A. Okay. All your indications, all your marks are on the outside as well. This is very, very important, because on the outside we can get plenty of access to sand the pencil marks off. If you mark them on the inside, there's always a chance it's going to be very, very difficult to get the pencil marks off, and we won't be able to achieve the quality product that we're aiming for. The quality finish on this product is clean without any pencil marks. Okay, you can see that my pieces are coming together quite nicely. This must mean that I did my marking correctly. I've cleaned up all my joins. They're lovely and tight, limited gaps, which will also help the PVA. If there's too many gaps with the PVA, it won't bond and won't hold. Okay, now we have a loosely assembled product, a little bit of glue running down the sides, it's not too bad. Now we can put on the picture frame. But before that, you can see, if we turn it around, you can see B arrow, A arrow. I've got all my pieces in the right spot. This is very, very important. Okay, into the last section of this demonstration before we start moving into placing the base in, and of course moving on to the lid. First thing we need to do is apply the picture framing clamp. Picture framing clamp has a handle on the side here that puts pressure on the strap. We need to undo that, push out the strap. Sometimes you're probably going to need an extra hand on this. In classes, usually I have 2 or 3 people helping each other in applying the picture framing clamp in exactly the right spot. Okay, we spread the corners around, making sure that the feet are flat. We pull the strap reasonably tight. We do up the handle on the side to apply pressure to the metal strap, and then we have the handle here with the thread. Okay, we want to make sure that these are roughly in the middle of the project, centered on the project. Okay, that's not too bad. So we're not too high, not too low. We're going to evenly spread the pressure from the clamp. Just double check, make sure that's in the right position. Okay, everything's in the right position. We can move forward and tighten the clamp. Okay, with that pressure now, that's pulling our joins in lovely and tight. And we have to leave that now for 12 hours while the glue dries before we move on to the next process.